All right. Emily?
Hi. I'm in very deep mourning and very deep sadness because I had a vision of this class that is just not holding up. And my vision of this class was that there was an ethic of caring for the greater whole, of caring for the vulnerable, of caring for the sick. And the way this is manifesting is that I feel there's a lot of tension in the culture in this class around vaccinations and anti-vaccinations. And I don't know in this class about masking. And I was in a conversation about 3 weeks ago when I heard from some anti-mask vaxxers, and okay, but I felt astounded because I felt that nonviolent communication in my vision is that there is an ethic, there's a pikuach nefesh. And I have friends that are anti-vaxxers who are Jewish, who do follow the value of pikuach nefesh, of life and death, and went out and immediately got vaccinated. And it's not just vaccination, it's masking. And I'm just grieving, and I'm not sure, like, I don't have the skill set, and I don't want to argue with people. I don't want to engage, and I don't want to spend my time where I'm seeing in comments and stuff that people have to like say that apologize for like getting vaccinated, when I have this vision that there's a greater whole that we should have reverence for. So I just felt like I had to share that because I'm very sad, very, very sad. And especially when I just saw my doctor this week, and he had COVID exhaustion from trying to convince people to get vaccinated. And it's not just the vaccine. And if you're not going to vaccinate, I'm not going to argue about that, or I'm not going to like even touch that, because there's a zillion reasons why people don't get vaccinated. But please, if you're not going to vaccinate, please quarantine yourself, or at least wear a mask and care about the whole. If you're not going to vaccinate, care about the whole. So that's what I wanted to bring up. And I don't know how other people feel about this, but I am pretty devastated about it in this particular community, because I had a different vision of the greater whole. And I know I practice Jewish ethics, and pikuach nefesh is everything, especially among my anti-vaxxer friends who are willing to take the vaccine just because of pikuach nefesh.
Okay, so I want to receive you, and before I say anything to you, I want to say something to the whole in an attempt to both hold you and people who may disagree with you. So I want to super slow down so that we can watch and see whether there is something in the work that we do here that can be relevant to a moment like this. And I want to just summarize the bits that I'm hearing from you in terms of what's important to you, and let me know if I got everything. So what I am hearing from you that is important to you, and my goal is to say it in a way that you will feel heard, and people who disagree with you will feel connected, will not feel slighted or againstness or anything like this. Does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So the pieces that I am hearing that are important to you, deep value of yours is care for the whole. And I'm hearing deep mourning in you, because in the way that you understand this value, you're not experiencing companionship with other people around the value in terms of how you interpret their actions. Is that accurate? I don't think it's everything, but at least that part. I want to try to say everything. Just tell me if this part is accurate.
It's nuanced, but yeah.
What's missing in that part?
I'm exhausted from, I don't understand, but I get that people aren't going to vaccinate, and there's a zillion reasons why they're not. But I'm asking that if they're not going to vaccinate, then please follow protocol.
Okay, so that's a separate part. I want to capture one bit after another before you say more things that you already said, because I can't capture it all in one sentence. I want to capture every piece. The piece that I captured, does that resonate with you as true about you?
Yeah.
Okay. Then another piece that I'm hearing from you is that you are stretching to have compassion and understanding for people who may have all kinds of reasons for the choices that they're making, and that you want to be met in the stretching. So what I'm hearing is a need for companionship and stretching towards the whole that looks different for different people wherever they are, but some way of stretching towards a shared holding of complexity and care. Does that match?
Yeah.
And deep, deep mourning. I'm guessing that that is in relation to your such deep longing to find belonging in this group, that you would so want to have a sense of belonging within this group, which at the moment you're not finding because of the lack of companionship that I just pointed to in how you understand things. You're making a furrowed forehead. That tells me that I didn't get it.
I do feel like I have companions in this group, but I'm disappointed in the vision. It does not everyone holds the vision that I hold, but I do feel I have companions in the group.
Okay. So you have companionship with some people, but what I was trying to capture, my sense from what you said is that you don't have a sense that you can rest here and settle in something that is very precious to you. That's what I meant by belonging, because you don't see people holding things in the same way. There's something in you that maintains tension within, and you can't fully relax. Did I capture every part of what was important to you?
Yeah, and an exhaustion of just deep sadness, about I just have deep sadness about all this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm now going to ask people to do a mental exercise. And this is the exercise. You may or may not be someone who chooses not to vaccinate. And I'm not going to ask people to expose themselves. That's not the point. I'm going to invite you all, whatever your opinion is. I'm not inviting you, Emily. I'm inviting you to stay where you are. I'm inviting everyone else to imagine that your choice is not to vaccinate and that you are in complete disagreement with Emily. Whatever your opinion is, if you can't make that leap, your practice of nonviolent communication, if you have one, is limited. Because the core of the practice, one of the deep cores of the practice, is to be able to imagine ourselves into every human being that we ever have known or know of, regardless of their opinion or actions. If we can't do that, then we continue to live in the world of separation. I'm wondering if that makes sense to people, what I'm saying now. So I am inviting everyone except Emily. Sure, you are welcome to join others, but I'm not asking this of you because I am now trying to be supportive of you. So I'm asking everyone else to imagine, or it may be true for you, that you're in complete disagreement with Emily, and then to compare within your mind and body what Emily said and what I reflected, and see if in what I reflected, you can see a bridge between you, the non-vaccinator that disagrees with Emily, and Emily. I'm going to say it again because I think it's a challenging one to even conceive of what I'm saying. If I imagine myself being the person that Emily is upset with, and when I imagine myself hearing what she said, I would feel distance from Emily. I could easily see that. Can others see that possible distance if you are not aligned with her? My question is that distance smaller in relation to what I reflected of what she said? I would like someone to speak to that. What makes the distance smaller? Because that's what I want us to learn, not to reach a collective decision about whether we're going to vaccinate or not. That is not my issue. But my issue is, how do we relate to this polarization, to this division? So can anyone say, in your own words, what makes the distance smaller in how I reflected?
Yeah, I think for me, because the way you reflected it back was purely like from feelings and needs, I could connect to all of those needs and feelings. So it wasn't this sort of, oh, here's this point of view, right, wrong, judgment, blame. It's, oh, here's these needs that I can really connect to and relate to.
Thank you. Is there something else for you, Janie?
To me, because I felt in an absolute panic when I heard those very strong statements, and was just about to sort of turn off and run away until you started speaking. I think it was because you shifted back from strategies. Strategies were shifted out of your talk.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Wanda?
Yes, I think the way you summarized or reflected on what she was telling, I felt two positions being next to each other, opposite or, next to each other. And there was no hierarchy, no right, wrong. I didn't felt exclusion.
Thank you. Darby?
The way it came through for me was that you let go of any focus on the issues, which matches strategy, basically eliminated that from your reflection, connecting with her, and focused instead on the values and the qualities in a very slow way to make sure that it didn't run away into the greater picture, but that could actually have some space to be connected with the actual qualities, values.
Thank you. I think this is enough for the moment. I want to go back to you, Emily, and check with you. How are you doing in this moment? Just how are you doing?
I'm okay. I hear what you're doing and getting people to stretch and like shifting it away to like the broader, but I have a need, and my need is to know that we care about the vulnerable and the greater whole. And I feel very strongly about that vision.
So I want to submit that everyone can be caring about the vulnerable and the whole and reach different conclusions from you. This is the essence of what NVC can bring to polarized conversations. Exactly that. What you are doing that I think will undermine your capacity to reach anyone else. What you are doing is you are collapsing caring for the vulnerable and the whole with doing a particular thing that you believe is the way that proves that you do. It leaves no room for someone else to care about the vulnerable and the whole in a different way. That is key to the transformation from war to coming up with solutions that work for everyone. Exactly that. I'm still not going to get into the issue. I'm just here to invite you to reflect on this over time, probably not just tonight, and everyone else to reflect on how we handle this, and that is the issue. And now I just want to see how we do the same thing with another position. So it's not going to be like, we do this to this position so that ... but the other position so that ... why. So I am wondering if there is anyone who is willing to argue the other position, whether you have it or not. I can argue all positions here, and I'm not going to say in public what my own position is. I'm just not. This is my commitment for however long that is. I'm staying out of this controversy. But I am very committed to supporting people who want to work it out to be better equipped to do so. Just a few weeks ago, I was doing a coaching call for activists where I did just that. Whatever somebody said, I spoke from another position. It was like a dance without ever revealing what mine was. And it was none of the things that I said. All right, Ted, can you argue for this other position? And let's see if we can find a thing or two to reflect. And then after that, we'll go into small groups. And what I would like you to practice in your small groups is religiously, like mandatorily not argue with each other. The only things that I want you to do is to state one position after another, whether you have them or not, without revealing which one is yours. And then the other people in your group try to reflect in the way that I reflected Emily and that I will reflect Ted for a minute or two before I go to greet my sister. All right, Ted, go for it.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to start off by saying it's remarkable, the serendipity of this. I joined this program largely because of the extent to which this conversation is erupting in my life, both in work and personal. So thank you, Emily, for your honesty and sharing. I'll just say that what I'm encountering on this topic is almost 90% of the time it comes down to this issue: a care for the collective, an interest in everyone, looking after the social well-being of all of us. And I will simply, my only point on this would be it's not the exclusive domain of those that are vaccinated to be caring for the social well-being.
Okay, so you're not doing what I was actually asking someone to do, which is to argue the position of I'm not vaccinating and here's why, and whatever people are saying about caring for the whole or whatnot, just like really argue that position.
I see.
So that we can find within it the needs.
I'm not sure maybe how far you want me to get into the rationale of it, but I'm not vaccinating because it's not something that I believe has the net results of what the vaccination is set out to do is not going to achieve the end goal. And whatever you want to call it, conspiracy theories or whatever, it's just in my own research and my own intuitive feeling, I know that this is the path for me, and I'm not judgmental of those that have chosen to vaccinate. I just know that for me, what I have come to learn of what it is in terms of an injection into my body, it's not going to deliver the truth that is within me around how to get over this period of time. And I mean, that's a simple choice. It is a choice which I am entitled to make, and I am not discounting the concerns and the danger of COVID. I'm just simply choosing to take a different pursuit in maintaining my own health and my family's health. So I could argue the nitty gritty. I can argue the holistic approach to this, but ultimately I feel like this is a choice that I've made, and I feel like it deserves respect and something that is as much of a rational choice as not getting vaccinated.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from you is you want to be trusted in your care and the depth and rigor of your investigations. and in your commitment to critical thinking and making choices for yourself. You want to be trusted in all of that.
Yeah.
That none of that takes away for you from caring for the whole.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So I just want to say, for anyone who believes like Emily, if you're not able to do what I just did with Ted, you will not be able to have the kinds of conversations that lead to a world that works for all, regardless of position. For anyone who believes like Ted, if you can't do what I did with Emily, you're not going to be able to have the conversations that lead to a solution that works for all. This is the task, not to convince each other. The task is to find out what is really important to everyone. I am beyond confident that if we brought together a group of people with diverse opinions and gave that group sufficient support in facilitation and sufficient access to research every information that they would want to research, they would reach a conclusion that cares for the whole. And I don't have any prediction what that would be, because I have a lot of humility. That much I have. A lot of humility about what we don't or don't know. And I trust the process of mutual influencing of people more than anything else in terms of reaching conclusions. All right.
Pause the recording now if you'd like to participate in the practice exercise.
So what I would like to hear now is nothing more about COVID. Of course, I can't rule out what people are going to do. But what I'm interested in hearing is, what did anyone learn about listening to people across significant differences? What did you learn about that? Either all together or in small groups. Hawkeye.
Hi, thank you. For me, I felt a deeper sinking in of the need to recognize the other person or group's humanity, like holding them as valuable first, and finding that before moving into whatever strategies. I just felt that sink in for me deeper. Thanks.
I'm really glad to hear that. Dimple.
In our group, there was one that was really hard for us to understand. So it just took a lot of probing and asking, like, can you give some more context or more information? So I think with differences that are really big, it just takes a lot more curiosity and probing is what we learned. So.
Yes. It's so deep, this one, because it is required in order to bridge the gap, because without the curiosity, you just can write off the person so easily. Yeah. Sometimes I carry bits of curiosity with me about something for years, and I still hold them as curiosity rather than my big one is the Walton brothers and sisters, not just brothers, the Walton family. I'm really, really, really curious to really understand what is the actual experience of having billions of dollars and knowing that your workers, your full-time workers, need food stamps to pay their bills. It's not about condemning it or anything. That's easy. But to really have a sense of what is the visceral sensation of that, I don't have it yet. And I have a sense of getting closer. It's lovely to just have the curiosity. It's so much better than to just write them off. Thank you. Darby?
Thank you. Huck, I want to appreciate what you said first, having and just to add my piece, The learning was about the layering of the interest in connection. So the curiosity about what's being said, curiosity about what's deeper. But at one point we had accord. There was an understanding. Yes, we had reached the connection, but we went through a circle and realized, oh, what was said in that original piece, there was something really big there that wasn't said, but that's present.
Yes, this is not surprising to me in a way, because I think that when we actually open our hearts to really taking in another person where they are, we are changed by that. We cannot not be changed by that. This is why Martin Buber defines dialogue as a conversation, the outcome of which is unknown. He has there between adults, which I refuse to grant him, as if children cannot be in dialogue. But I take that piece out, and it's not the primary piece. The primary piece is, if I enter a conversation with a known outcome, I'm not in dialogue. If the only outcome that is acceptable from this conversation is that you change your mind about whatever it is, then we're not in dialogue. And that means that as I listen to you, I make myself available to be affected by what you say. That is the act of nonviolence. That is the radical humility. I've read this many articles, I've read that many books, I've talked to that many people, and I have formed my opinion, and I remain humbly available to hear the next person with the possibility that I will shift everything I've believed. And given that we are changed, then by the end of a circle, we will be more available to understand more, because collectively we have increased our capacity from each of us listening to the others. That's what I'm getting from what you said. Yeah. I'm going to give Emily priority given the vulnerability of having exposed herself. So Emily, I'll invite you to speak next.
Thank you. I found it really helpful, and I feel like a sense of release and ease, because we went around, we had a nice group, and we stated very different positions, and I could see the needs. I could see the needs in those different positions, which sort of eased me, because so then I could just like take it in. And then when you were bringing up Martin Buber, anyway, I have a philosophy that when I'm in deep conversation, I feel like I should be surprised. I should be in an element of surprise. Mm-hmm. And the surprise, concepts of the other, it's like when you're in deep listening, you don't know what's going to happen. And you need to embrace the surprise. And then that I was released. And the little group I had, it was very calming for me, even though we were stating multiple different possible positions.
I am so glad to hear this. I'm so glad to hear this, because the care for the whole that I am bringing here includes within it care for the people that I believe don't care for the whole. If I reject the people who don't care for the whole, then I am already not caring for the whole. And so I have a sense that that is a shift that happened for you in that room, is opening up to that. And so I feel profoundly satisfied that I was able to offer you something that supported you. Thank you. Monique?
I was on the receiving end of a lot of questions in my group. I was in the group that Dimple was referring to about the amount of probing that was required to get to what it was. And I felt in my body a lot of fear and a lot of anger at the questions. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I took away from this is that curiosity by itself has to be I want it to be very tender when I'm doing that with someone else.
Totally.
Because I was like, get the fuck away from me. It was like, and it was visceral. It was not an intellectual exercise. It was a visceral thing.
Yeah. Okay. So let me speak to this. And first, let me say, it's so interesting because, my ear and eye catch a lot more than I actually choose to say. And when Dimple said probing, I let it go because I thought that the benefit we were going to get from talking about the curiosity was important enough that let's let it go. But I had a thing come up about the probing. So it's like perfect. So that now life brings it through you. So what is it that stood out to me? The word probing is actually not relational. It's not a relational word. It doesn't have relational energy in it. If I am probing, I'm not fully relating. So can you give an example of a question, Dimple? And let's see if we can do the tweaking that would support it.
That would be, I was just thinking, that's like, and I could sense in the moment with the other party in our group, I don't want to just name her, but I could just sense Monique getting like frustrated and angry. And I was thinking maybe I should give her empathy, or should we carry on with the exercise? But an example of the probing, or maybe the question.
Wait, slow down, Dimple, slow down.
Uh-huh.
When you say maybe I should give her empathy, or should we carry on with the exercise?
Mm-hmm.
You either or'd those.
Oh, I either or'd those. It should have been both. Yeah, totally. Thank you. Thank you for catching that.
It didn't should have been.
Yeah.
It's an option that might support connection sometimes.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, but let's hear one of the questions and let's see what we can do with it.
And thank you even for that learning. Okay. I'm trying to remember. I think maybe one of the questions, I think what I said
slow down. Remember?
Yeah, if you can slow down, because we have a,
there are people who are really not fluent, not fluent. Think about it. Just think about a person. Think, for example, I on my screen, you're on the same screen with Tuan. Are you seeing Tuan?
I see Tuan smiling, yes, with a heart. Hey, Tuan.
Yeah. So it helps to focus on an individual.
Okay.
Because then you want him to understand. You want him to understand what you're saying. So if you focus on him, you will more likely remember to slow down than in an abstract, I need to slow down.
Thank you. Very helpful. So I'm remembering in our group, we were trying to reflect feelings and needs. And then I think the other party in our group was saying, I can't understand this unless we get to A, B, or C. And so what I was asking Monique was, I was saying, Monique, would you be open to sharing a little bit more about like the context behind this, so we can get to some understanding, so we can then try to reflect back the feelings and needs. And I can just sense like the tension building up in Monique. And I don't know if that was the moment, Monique, where you're getting angry and annoyed. And okay.
Okay. So several things here, this is almost scientific. Obviously it's not scientific at all, but there are very clear principles. The first one is a question that doesn't have a need clearly behind it is more likely when there's already tension, difference, conflict, or anything, that question will reduce trust.
Okay.
And you asked the question, would you be open to saying a bit more of the context? And then you said, so that what? Can you say that part again?
I think I said so that we could better reflect your feelings and needs. I think it was something like that. So, yeah.
Okay. That's clinical. The reason you gave is clinical. It's so that we can do the exercise, we can do the practice, we can do A, B, C, D. But really, does that resonate, Monique?
Oh, absolutely.
That makes sense. Okay.
The reason why you are asking her is because you want to understand her.
Yes. Yeah.
It's entirely different if you start by saying, I see that we are trying to understand you, and so far we're not successful, and we really want to. I know that is true for me, and I sense that it's true for the other person. I think it will help us understand you if you can give us more context. Would you be open to doing that? No tension.
That makes sense. Got it. Yeah.
So this is an instance of a larger principle. The larger principle is this. At any moment in time, there are any number of needs that are alive at the same moment. I'm not going to ever put out a laundry list of needs. I'm always going to choose one or two. And there is strategic consequence to which of them I choose to prioritize in naming them. Even in an empathy guess. What I am trying to name is the needs that move most in the direction of relationship and most in the direction of vision. Whether in me or the other person. I never lie. I don't massage it. I don't manipulate. I don't invent. But I dig into my humanity to move in that direction as much as I can while still being 2000% authentic. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
So hear the difference between saying, I want to understand you, and saying, I want to reflect your feelings and needs better.
Totally. I hear the difference. And you know what?
Both are true. Both are true.
I was just going to say that, Miki. What I realize is both are true, but by saying one versus the other, I can see how that would have landed as not care for the other person. And by also saying it later,
exactly,
it's completely missed. Yeah. Very helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Here's another thing. Let's say that you guess that somebody else's need is safety. Owning a need for safety is very vulnerable and difficult for people. Not always, but many times in a conflict. So I wouldn't generally guess that. Also, if I guess that somebody has a need for safety, it doesn't generally bring me closer to them. So I look for what is a need that they might have that is about creating something, vision, dream, expanding, whatever. So I'm always thinking, what is within the range of what is fully authentic and true, and it's going to be more connecting, more inspiring, more expansive. So I would guess care rather than respect.
Yeah. Okay.
For example, respect is very formal and separating. Okay?
Thank you, Miki. Oh, such rich learning. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Corey.
Hearing this conversation is so I have been thinking about how sometimes curiosity might get stuck up here. And just actually earlier today, I was thinking about the word wonder, which comes for me from the heart space in a way that curiosity might and might not. And
Totally.
doing this exercise brings me into a place of wonder. And the other thing just to bring into the space is have been reading Valerie Carr's See No Stranger, and one of the first chapter is on wonder, and she talks about our interconnection. And one of the kind of echoes through the book is, you are a part of me I do not yet know. And I wonder how that might change our conversations if we entered them in with the spirit of, you are a part of me I do not yet know.
Yeah. I like that phrase. Thank you. Just breathing for a moment. Melissa.
Oh, hi. I like how you said care for the whole includes those who don't care for the whole. I like that statement on its own. And just for the record, in Emily's small group, we didn't actually even go there. We didn't express the part where others didn't care for the whole. In my view, not caring for the whole is an interpretation of what's going on for the other person. And we didn't
Yes. Yes, thank you. I want to be more precise. I want to be able to care for those whom I believe don't care for the whole. Thank you. Rana?
I had a very humbling experience because as soon as we start, I notice in my head that first, all the things you said I wanted to do. I wanted to say my opinion and I wanted to argue. So that by itself put me in an open situation because I was connecting with what was happening in me. And it was like, wow, this is something I don't like in others, and I'm having it. So
priceless, priceless. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Roberta?
Yes. So I'm celebrating that in doing this exercise where I took on the view, which is not the one I usually hold, that there's this exercise of imagination that links me so much with, the endeavor of literature and creative writing and the richness of all creative endeavor. And that's what most great writers do, is they commit acts of empathy by going into other people's minds. So I was amazed at how easy it was for me to take the other view. And, there are just these probably dozens of, I call them factoids, little facts that are always waving around my head in relation to this issue. And that I was able to pull in little factoids, which I usually ignore to make my argument, whereas usually I put them outside of me and they're not important. And then I'm pulling to me the ones that bolster my argument. And that's how I experience this information, orgy that's going on a lot of the time. Yeah. And
I love it.
It was very educational and enlivening. Thank you.
I want to share a couple of things as I hear from you. One is, I wrote a novel, which many people don't know, even though it is on my website. The novel is about a guy who killed a woman in a fit of rage. And fundamentally, the novel emerged from an exercise of trying to write about someone who was completely different from me, completely, and trying to enter his world as fully as I could. What is hilarious is that only when I finished the whole thing did I realize one really deep quality that he and I share that I didn't realize while I was writing. He's very self-reflective. That's the main thing that he and I share. So it was really that exercise. And a great writing teacher that I had says that novels are acts of kindness compared to memoirs, because a memoir, you stay within yourself, but in a novel, you exit into another territory, like you said. And then the last thing I want to say is, it doesn't happen very much anymore because the way that I teach and the things that I teach are different. When what I was teaching was more within the center of what people usually teach when they teach NVC, I had the great honor of being George Bush a number of times, a house painter who molested an 8-year-old girl, a man who stole everything from his wife, including all her work and all their friends, and left her completely destitute, and various and sundry other characters. And it's an amazing exercise in empathy to step into the shoes of someone else and actually live life from within that to the extent possible, even if only for a few minutes. I was also present one time when Marshall Rosenberg relented to a request that I've heard people make of him more than once. He did it only once in my presence, which is, I have no other words for it other than he became Adolf Hitler. He didn't role play him. He became Adolf Hitler. He explained to us that he read and studied the life of Adolf Hitler because if there was going to be any merit to NVC, it had somehow to include Adolf Hitler within it. And he believed that he had put more energy into trying to be empathic towards Adolf Hitler than probably any other human being who ever lived. And so he agreed to be him. And it was stunning because he was him. You know, I imagine everybody has seen those movies with these eyes that Hitler had. Marshall looked like him. The features were different, but he was Hitler. And then what happened is people tried to empathize with him. He picked a moment, a very pivotal moment in Hitler's life, which was the moment when he was turned down from architecture school. You know, it's quite possible that if the guy had been accepted to architecture school, there wouldn't have been World War II. It's that pivotal. And so people tried to empathize with him. And then, you know, after 2 or 3 iterations, people wanted to express. And Marshall said, basically, in a situation like this, it's probably 2 hours of straight empathy before you could put in one word of self-expression. So I want to bring that humility to us of just how big the commitment is and how far all of us are from being able to step into being for 2 hours in empathy with somebody possessed with hatred. Those who do it bring people from the extreme right back in. Enough stories now to know that this thing actually works. You can't argue anybody back from there, but you can listen to them and what has happened to them and their feelings, and transformations happen. The data exists. Sure, it's quote unquote anecdotal, but there are enough anecdotes that really make it potent as a vision to aspire to. Thank you. Anything else you want to say, Roberta, before I go to the next person?
I'm complete. Thank you.
Desiree.
Hi, Miki. So what I want to bring is, it's an inquiry I'm having. I want to preface it, one, with this is something that you kind of asked us not to bring to this time, possibly. And I see the validity of this exercise we did completely. And there's a piece that I got in my breakout room that I want to bring here. And I don't know if it's kind of like a power and privilege kind of thing, but just that there are some people who live in countries where people don't have access to the vaccine. And to jump into this role play and feel that missing from what we're holding here somehow felt off to me. And so I'm kind of asking you for help.
How would you bring it in? How would you bring it in? What would you say?
I'm not actually sure. I'm almost more asking you. It just felt so missing. Like it's like somehow that we went into the groups without some acknowledgement of like big pain people may be holding. I think we're open to moving to that, towards that pain in our small group if it was wanted. But I think there's just some question for me around.
I'm still confused about what piece of it would you want to bring in. I'll give you a concrete thing and see what you think about it.
Yeah.
For me personally, it is super wrenching that in Israel, where I'm from, there is really, really, really big pressure on people to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
If they're Jewish, there's pressure on them to get vaccinated. If they're Palestinian, they don't have access to the vaccine. Those two coexist there.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that gives you an example of what you would want to bring into it. How would you want to frame it?
I wish that helped me, but I still feel really unclear. It was just I felt like I wanted to bring something, but I still don't know exactly what.
Okay. Is there anyone who has something that you imagine you could say that captures this unease that Desiree is bringing?
Thank you.
Anish, don't stay with yourself. Just enter a character and say whatever the piece is that is related to this.
Yeah, I was in Desiree's group, and it was my sharing. I'm actually trembling when I say this. I can't relate to this subject because my reality is very different. We don't have access to vaccine to take a stance whether it is pro or anti. And I tried to participate in the exercise, but it was very challenging because I just couldn't connect to the distance of power and privilege that some people have to be even in a position to kind of choose a position like that, and with a phrase that it's caring for the whole. So for me, what is becoming more and more clear is that what you said a few weeks ago, that the world is an unequal place.
Mm-hmm.
It sometimes slaps me so hard in my face to...
Okay, so I now can play a character. I can play a character that I want to see if anyone can connect with me about. The character that I'm going to play is not Anish. It's just inspired by what you just said. The character would say, bullshit. You talk about caring for the whole. That's entirely hypocritical. Do you spend 1 minute thinking about the hundreds of millions of people in India who are exposed to this thing and are not given even the option of having the vaccine? Go away, you care for the whole. Would that be a character that makes sense?
Exactly the sounds that are in my head. Yeah.
Thank you. So now I would like somebody to connect with me and see how would you capture what's important to me without polarizing from anyone. Without polarizing from anyone. It's easy, all too easy, to be the person with privilege who breaks rank and goes over and joins with a person who is in the morally superior, physically marginalized position and say, yes, I can't believe, like you, I can't believe they're saying this. I know, I was uncomfortable too when I heard it. Turning your back to the person who spoke before. That's not the way forward into liberation for all. So what is it that somebody could say to me? What would be the reflection that would catch me? Who has it? If you feel able to capture in a non-polarizing way what I just said in this character. Ruth?
Anish, I just can't tell you how it breaks my heart to hear you speak.
Okay, so what you did now is you moved to yourself. You're not reflecting, and please don't use the name Anish because it's me. Just say Miki. I want to keep it out of exposing anyone. You are speaking about you and your heartbreak, which is a fine thing to do, but isn't actually showing me that you understand me. And the key is I want you to show me that you understand me. So let's try with Ale.
Okay, so Miki, what I'm hearing is that you're feeling very frustrated and maybe also confused and also sad because you are hearing this conversation about
Ale, are you open to coaching?
Of course.
Okay, so the coaching is this: the deeper connection happens at the level of need, not at the level of feeling.
Okay.
Especially if you start naming, are you feeling this and are you feeling this and are you feeling this? I'm jumping with you from place to place. But I didn't speak about feelings at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if you even understand what I'm trying to say when you tell me, are you feeling this and are you feeling this and are you feeling this?
Yes.
So
can I try again?
Yeah.
Okay. So Miki, I can imagine by what you're saying that you are really wanting or you're longing to be seen.
No. Wanting to be seen is an NVC workshop need. It's not how people think, especially not in a charged moment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you mean by wanting to be seen. Sorry, honey.
Okay.
What's really important to me? Shall I say it again?
Acknowledgement?
No. It's still, you want relational, you're individualizing it to me. So Nikki suggested equality. That's not it. For the character that I'm playing, it's not equality. I know very well what it is, but I'm not going to say it because I want people to try to grapple with it. I'll give you a clue, not like we are in a guessing game, but just give you information where to focus your attention. I think about the words that I said. What did I say? Do you really care about the whole? You're hypocritical. None of these point to equality. Sure, I may want equality, but that's not what I was talking about right now.
Inclusion, belonging, you want to be part of the whole. Is that it?
No. Think about the meaning of the words that I said. Directly, the guess is always in what I said, not in something else.
Integrity.
I'm gonna call on people that I don't recall hearing from at all. That would be Wolfgang. I don't think I've heard from you, but maybe I have.
You're right. So is it that you care about honesty and that we share the same reality?
It's in that direction. There's something about your words that are kind of like, they are a little cold in my ear, and including also the tone. So I'm having this odd cognitive dissonance. It's like you are almost getting it cognitively, but I don't feel held. With Ale, she was off, but I trusted that she actually cared about me in the character. Does that make sense to you, Wolfgang, why I would say that?
It does, and I feel a little nervousness, and I see many reasons for speaking in that way, and this might be one.
Many ways in speaking in which way? I'm confused.
Which you feel as cold or not connecting.
tell me more. I would really like to understand the depth of your thinking, possibly even to learn from it. So I hear you feeling nervous, and I want to invite you in.
Thank you. So earlier on, I felt really moved and touched by this warm curiosity and distinction towards probing. Mm-hmm. And so during the last minutes, it felt a bit to me as if it was a kind of probing. And when I raised my hand, I was not sure if I was fit for the job. And so
you thought that your guess was going to be in the direction of probing, or that I was probing? I'm confused.
The atmosphere, I felt a little bit like probing. So earlier on, I felt it was a warm curiosity and about the dialogue and open to the part I do not know yet and all that stuff that really touched me. And then during the last few minutes, I felt, it's a bit like an examination here. Who's the first one to get the A mark? So.
Thank you. I'm really appreciating this. And I can tell you specifically in the earlier part, what I was doing was weaving connection. I was within me, my focus, my purpose was to weave connection, because my intuitive analysis of what was going on, where did you disappear? Oh, there you are. My intuitive analysis of what was going on is that the words that were being said would be polarizing and create tension. So I was weaving. In this moment, my focus was on supporting people's learning. So I was bringing in an energy of coaching, not an energy of connecting. I'm wondering if this helps to understand this.
Oh, this helps me a lot. Thank you. And this is something I've discussed with quite a few participants of that class for a while. And if I'm really honest, then I appreciate what you are doing here, and this journey between coaching and supporting coaching for the person and training for the entire class. And even though I'm really appreciating that, I sometimes feel lost, and then when my nervousness kicks in.
Thank you. If you ever want to speak again, start by saying that you feel nervous.
Thank you.
Because the second you say that, my orientation to you will shift.
Thank you.
Thanks. Rosa, you raised your hand and then lowered it.
Yeah, I did. I'm nervous. I'll start by saying that I'm nervous, and it's got to do with the language, mainly, with maybe a lack of understanding of what you all are saying, and maybe missing parts of it, and then unsure of if what I'm going to say would make sense. I think you said what you'd like to hear, and what I feel you would like to hear is my acknowledgement of my privilege and how far I am from understanding or feeling what you are feeling and your people are feeling by not having access to the vaccine.
I want to say that in the body that I am occupying at the moment, that wasn't actually my intention. And even though what you said isn't accurate, I feel connected with you, because within what you are saying, there is a quality of humility and orienting towards me that, even if it's inaccurate, reaches me. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in the character, after hearing from you, I would probably say something like, thanks, I so appreciate that you're able to own and acknowledge your privilege. And that's not what I really meant to say, blah, 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 blah. And I still want to stay with that to see what we can glean from it, because I'm finding this exploration unexpected and super rich. Ale, are you wanting to try again?
Yes. I wanted you to read my mind. Okay, so Miki, are you wanting to trust that your needs matter?
Thank you. Still NVC workshop language, but I can read through it and I will just tweak it this way.
Okay.
It's not me individually.
Yeah, you said it already. Yeah, okay.
Are you wanting to trust that your people are remembered? Would catch me more from where you come.
Mm-hmm. You and the your people, or the group you belong to, or
not the group you belong to.
No,
just you, your people, the people in your country, something.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, that you're remembered.
You and millions of others. I heard someone say.
Yeah.
You and millions
hundreds
of
millions. Hundreds of millions. There is a humanitarian tragedy going on in my country that no one talks about. Yeah. Okay. Lane.
Miki, you carry such heavy burdens for your people. The injustice that's been done and propagated, it seems to be hopeless.
I want to pause you, Lane, and give you bit by bit feedback. First, your way of saying my name, I'm playing someone. I'm not that someone. Your way of saying my name, I wanted to cry. You reached me so much. Let us never forget the power of intonation, bodily orientation, pauses in speech and all of that. You got me there completely. And then the words, you carry such heavy weight, same deal. And then afterwards, what you did is what I was talking about before, which is the path. In this case, doesn't necessarily come from a privileged person, but it doesn't have to come from a privileged person, of agreeing with me and painting it in language that evaluates the injustice that is happening. I don't remember more words that you said.
Yeah.
I might feel relief in hearing you say that. If there's polarization in the group, it would do nothing for it. It would only intensify it. This is one of the reasons why we do the conversion from the analysis and the evaluation into what is wanted. So, do you want to try to do that, Lane?
Yeah, well, I feel so much, well, it's enough feeling, but it's so huge in terms of the suffering that's going on. The suffering is so huge that it's not about privilege, and not to jump to a solution, but to acknowledge.
Slow down, Lane. Let me tweak it a little bit. I am now Lane speaking to the character, okay? And as Lane to the character, I would say, I'm sitting here and seeing the suffering in the name of which you're speaking. That keeps the focus on the suffering.
Yeah.
And there's movement. And then from there, say something about, what do you think I want? What do you think I want?
For sure, relief. For sure.
What does relief look like? Relief in the form of what?
Of relief for your people.
Yeah, that's beyond my reach. That's beyond my reach. I can't actually imagine it. I'm in too much despair. What I want, the relief that I want, is in this moment. I can't get governments to change. I can't get the pharmaceutical companies to change, but I can get maybe these two people who are here with me to see.
Yeah. Yeah. To see the connections in terms of how you're seeing this, how you're feeling this, how you're being this.
Yes.
To be in this moment, to be sacred with this moment.
Yes. That gets me. And that doesn't make anyone else bad. I don't want us to go the route of giving person A relief by implicitly making person B wrong. That we do day in and day out. The whole world of power and privilege language boils down to this. Thank you, Lane.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
I want to check in with Anish for a moment and see how you're doing.
Thank you, Miki. It was a beautiful process, especially when we came to the part of it was not about me, it's about me and the millions of others part. I think that was very softening. And I still feel that the actual point that I was trying to understand was not the one that got addressed, but this was also meaningful, what got addressed. Yeah.
What was the point that you wanted addressed? Could you tell me?
Yes, I've written it down, so I'm very clear with myself. So during the role play, I volunteered to play the person who was holding space. And after some time, I found it challenging to stay curious and to stay with the other person, because I suddenly realized that both the stances were out of my reach. That I was not an equal player. My stand on the issue depended on where I sit. So I don't have that equal say in this. So it was very challenging for me to choose either side. And I wasn't sure if my side was even acknowledged by my own self in this context. So where I am with right now is that there is grief and mourning for me to do. That's the piece that I have. However, the question that I have is, how does my own access to my own power and privilege affect my capacity to stay with someone else, especially when I don't have an equal say in it? So that's the piece that I'm not able to figure out, and maybe it's a topic for some other day. Yeah.
I would love you to bring it back again, because I think that when we sit in different social locations that have material consequences, it affects our imagination. This is what it means to have blind spots, is our imagination is stunted. And so some of us have an easy time imagining things, even if we never had an experience. And most of us don't. So when there is a gap, if we don't have that intuitive, imaginative capacity, we need to fill the holes with knowledge. Knowledge comes through risk. Either the risk of exposing ourselves to information, seeking out things, or the risk of talking to people who are different from us. Part of the risk is that we may discover something that is uncomfortable when we try to learn about people who are different from us. We may discover a lot that is uncomfortable, both about ourselves and about others. And there's no knowledge acquisition without that. So I'm wondering if this speaks to what you were holding. That's a no. If it takes effort to say yes, then it's a no.
I was still receiving it, I think. Yeah. And maybe there's not enough time to open it up. I would love to bring it next week and see where it goes.
Yeah,
I'm very curious. Just as an example that you quoted, when there are people on food stamps and there are people who are making billions in the same organization, how does someone on food stamp have the capacity to empathize with someone who is probably talking about how much money they have and they don't know what to make choices about that money. So how does someone do that? So does that make sense? And if it doesn't, then I'm very happy to bring it next week. Yeah.
It makes sense, and it's a conversation I would love to have. Yeah. I just want to pause for a moment and remind us, in case anybody doesn't remember, no leadership without this capacity that we've been working with today. It's essential, irreducible. If we can only understand one type of person or even three types of people, but not any type of person, we will be compromised in our capacity to lead. All right. What is a person to do when there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hands? And we are almost done. I'm going to start with Kyoko and then Tuan and then Emily, and I think that will take us to the end.
Okay, all right, thank you. This one goes into the whole part. We're thinking at the beginning, there are, even within the same country, there are people whose their life is all about survival and can't even miss the work, riding the public transportation and picking up the kids, doing everything all by themselves. So when are they supposed to go to this vaccination? So that level of understanding when we talk about the whole, I think that's what I was connecting. And when the privileged, which I consider myself, have more capacity to go into just coming closer to their reality rather than asking them to come closer to my reality. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Tuan?
Hi, Miki. The piece I wanted to bring is, and Anish just talked about choice, and I was seeing that maybe this need it's to have the same options as everyone to be part of the whole, so you can choose, even because for me the whole means that even if I don't want to get vaccinated, I want everyone to have the option so they can choose to vaccinate or not. And that's, for me, it's where we're struggling, because we live with people who have this choice. They have this option in their row of choices, and people who have not. This option, it's not there, and it's a lack of trust that we're part of the whole if we can't take the same choose the same option. So that was for me something that
Thank you.
Yes. And
I really appreciate the specificity of this piece.
And the other, it's that how hard it was for me to even imagine that you were a real person, because imagine someone standing for so much time, and how hard it is to actually get there. And I don't know, some hopeless that we're trying, and I tell myself I tell myself that we have trust here to really connect, deeply connect, and how far we can still be from those who don't have the access to power and privilege. And that's, imagine someone waiting so much time to have their needs accessed. It was hard for me. So just to
thank you. My character is happy to hear from you. Emily.
Well, I want to thank you for today, but again, I started out after we did our groups, I felt better, but I'm feeling such deep grief right now. And when I heard Anish speak, and that's because when I was talking at the beginning of my, that got this rolling, and really the work you did with us around empathy and imagination and role playing and all that is really, really powerful. But like when I was grieving over, when I'm my grief over the whole is the fact of what Anish was talking to, is that here we have the luxury to debate whether or not you can get a vaccine when most of the world doesn't even have access to it. So, and as I was listening to Anish and your character, it's just like, I want to continue that conversation that Anish is bringing up. Is like when you're on different playing fields, and we're the country that's like our vaccinations are expiring, where we could be sending it to countries that could use it. But what I'm saying is that my grief is so deep.
Yeah, I really want to keep us on the learning.
So the learning is that I appreciate that what you taught us today about the needs and the different role and taking on the different roles and hearing all possible sides and listening to what the needs are and imagining and being and being in the feet of empathy, using your imagination to feel what the other is feeling or experiencing in order to bridge us closer together, is what I got out of it.
Thank you. All right, Anna, are you telling us what you got from today, because we're closing?
Absolutely. I am sharing my appreciation for the way you responded to Emily in the first place. I think probably I was not the only person who had a sense of, this is a huge issue, and maybe it has explosive power. And then it turned out to be so, you really held the whole very much. And what stood out to me was like how you held Emily in her vulnerability and denied her at the same time to go to the issue she brought up in the first place, like, or on the surface. And you were very firm on guiding the whole group in the direction of purpose. And also Emily, I think, yes, I have really, that was a very, very fine demonstration for me in terms of facilitation.
Thank you. Sue and Glenn, and then we'll close.
Knowledge comes with risk.
Thank you. Can you say a sentence about why that spoke to you?
Yeah, because it requires courage to expand your knowledge. And something else that just occurred to me is that old biblical story about the Garden of Eden and the apple. That's what it's about. It's that if you eat you eat that apple, it comes with risk.
Okay, Glenn and Tuan snuck in.
Thanks, Miki. I'm taking away the value of welcoming. When you said to Wolfgang, I hear you're feeling nervous, and I want to invite you in. And his tone of voice, his face, his words, everything changed. It was like hopping into a warm bath. So I just got that value of welcoming today. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Bye.